Media. Right, that maximum effort is hard to sustain over a long period of time, and so by the time March comes in, and we're getting towards the back half of this month, we start to really wonder, do I have what it takes?
Hi, my name is Ronnie Cruz. After almost 2 decades as a career network marketer, I realized that despite continual work on my personal and professional development, that I had hit a massive brick wall. So I took a deep and honest look at myself, top to bottom, hoping to find answers, and my search led me to one conclusion. The definitions I held of my business, of my world, of my life were the very things holding me back. If I wanted to change, if I wanted to grow beyond my current circumstances, I had to wipe the slate clean and redefine. This show is dedicated to helping you identify the belief systems, the mindsets, the very definitions that have held you back, and then help you break through those limitations to finally create the life you've been working so hard to achieve. Welcome to the Redefine Podcast.
Okay, happy podcast day. Happy podcast day to you. Welcome to the show if you're brand new, and of course if you are an existing listener and or viewer, welcome back. Thank you for tuning in. And actually, this week's podcast day is a day late. For those of you that are listening to the podcast version, the video version is releasing the same day that it usually releases. So we're a day late, and I appreciate your patience and understanding. I had actually recorded this episode already, and in editing it and putting it together, I realized that I got the topic completely wrong. So instead of staying up all night to re-record and produce and just be tired and give you a half-ass episode, I decided to wait till the next day and, so I could start fresh. The topic for today is motivation. And in the original recording for this episode, I had said that there were two types of motivation. There was external motivation and internal motivation. I then realized while I was editing that there's actually only one type of motivation, and that's internal. So hopefully by the end of today, by the end of this episode, you'll realize, you'll understand why that is. And with that newfound understanding, then be able to get through periods of your life, those phases where you might feel a little less than motivated. Right now is actually a great time for that. It's mid to late March. And this is generally the time when when motivation starts to wane, not people, but motivation starts to wane. We kick off the year excited with our new goals and our resolutions. And, because of that excitement and that freshness, we break into action, right? It's full effort, right? But that's hard to sustain. Right, that maximum effort is hard to sustain over a long period of time, and so by the time March comes in, and we're getting towards the back half of this month, we start to really wonder, do I have what it takes? Things like not getting the results yet, putting in all that effort and not feeling like you're getting equal amount of return. You start to question your motivation, and if it doesn't get checked. What ends up happening is you just drop those New Year's resolutions altogether. I don't want that to happen for you. I mean, obviously, we all have an innate, I think, desire to expand and to grow and to do new things, achieve new things, and without these deeper understandings of our own mechanisms and how our mindsets work, we often can then fall victim to just living routine lives, right? Living the same day over and over again. And as I mentioned, I don't want that for you, right? I don't want that for you. So hopefully this discussion on motivation will help. So external and versus internal motivation. External motivation can be described as anything external, right? Obviously, external circumstances, external situations that move you, that drive you into action, that push you into action. The very kind of basic external motivation is survival, right? Survival and imminent danger. Going back to the caveman days, if you're faced with a saber-toothed tiger, you're going to be very motivated to either fight or flight. So that's deeply ingrained in all of our programming. It's there. It's very unconscious. Now, you might be saying that doesn't seem very internal. I mean, a saber-toothed tiger is not internal. How can a saber-toothed tiger attacking you be internal motivation? Well, it's not that the saber-toothed tiger is the actual motivation. It's just the external circumstance. Like I said, it's the external situation. The situation itself still has to go through an internal filter to tell you to either fight or flight, right? It has to go through all that internal programming, internal mechanism. So the motivation is really internal. That's reacting to an external stimuli. Sure, the motivation is unconscious, but it is internal nonetheless. So we go through these varying degrees of internal motivation and where they fall on the spectrum of conscious and unconscious, right? As I said, the fight or flight, the survival instinct is probably the most unconscious. You move along the spectrum and we start to talk about basic necessities, food, shelter, things like that, right? A more modern example of an external circumstance or situation that stimulates you into action that drives internal motivation would be rising cost of living, right? The rising cost of living is an external circumstance, and then you have the internal motivation then to go out and get a pay raise or get a new job that pays more, find a side hustle, do things to create more income for yourselves. That's internally motivated, driven by an external stimuli, driven by an external circumstance. Now, going further down the spectrum between unconscious and conscious, when we're talking about setting goals, dreams, new visions for yourself, that is completely internally driven, right? There's no external circumstance. There's no external stimuli. You are choosing and creating and manufacturing a vision for yourself that you want that doesn't exist, right? That doesn't exist yet externally. So all that motivation is, sorry, dog's in my lap. All that motivation is driven purely from internal sources. And so that's why it gets difficult to maintain over a long period of time, because you don't have an outside stimuli. You don't have an outside external circumstance that's driving that motivation. So if you find your motivation being challenged right now because, again, you're not seeing results yet, or you feel like you're putting in more effort than you're getting back, whatever the situation might be, I want you to make sure that, number one, you don't default back to what you were doing before, because then you're just going to get the same results over and over again, and nothing's going to ever change for you. And number two, recharge your motivation. In last week's episode, we talked about taking breaks, and that's a big part of recharging. Also, there are a couple of practices that you can implement while you're taking breaks that will really help to recharge your motivation. The first thing you can do is remember that it is a long-term game, right? This is a marathon, not a sprint. You've heard that before. Worthy goals take time. They're not going to happen necessarily in, 2-3 months. And it takes time for you to become the person you need to be in order to have or do the things that you want to have or do. So constantly remind yourself that it's going to be worth sticking it out. The second thing to remember is that it's a journey, right? Yes, we have goals, we have finish lines, we have destinations that we want to reach, but ultimately the real goal is enjoying the journey, enjoying the process. I know it sounds cliche, but it is really about who you become along the way, and the attainment of the thing is just the icing on the cake. So enjoy the journey and realize that the real reward is that you're getting better and better every day. And the last thing is to continue to build your belief. Build your belief around the thing that you're trying to achieve. Revisit your goals every day. Give yourself constant daily reminders of your goals, your dreams, the things that you want to achieve. And more importantly, remind yourself why you want to achieve those things in the first place. If you do these practices, you'll build a strong, solid belief around the things that you're trying to achieve. And no matter what challenges come your way, you'll have a wellspring of motivation to tap into. So hopefully that makes sense. Remember, all motivation is internal. It's just a matter of where it falls on the spectrum between unconscious and conscious. And the dreams and goals that you set for yourself are all in that conscious. And that's why it's sometimes harder to stay motivated for those things. But now you have the tools. Now you have these practices that you can implement. And like I said, you'll have a wellspring of motivation to tap into. So that's going to do it for today's episode. Thank you for tuning in. Again, I appreciate your patience in allowing me to release this week's episode late. great. I think for the better. Of course, if you haven't yet subscribed or followed the show, please go ahead and subscribe and follow the show. And I would appreciate it if you would share this, right? If you know one person who you think would appreciate this content and enjoy the message, if you know one person who needs motivation, right? Go ahead and please share it with them. Take that 3 to 5 seconds, smash that share button and send it away. It would really mean a lot to us here on the show. It would help us a great deal in helping us get these messages out there and these principles out there. So I'd really, really appreciate it. I'd be forever in your debt. So beyond that, thank you for tuning in. Have a great rest of your week. Have a great weekend. We'll see you next week with a fresh new one. So until then, be well, be safe. We'll see you in the next episode.